Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM. Joined by Nick Bonaddio and Rachel Dory, I'm Olivia Harlan Dekker. Okay, we are looking at futures. It's only been 2 weeks, but this might be the best chance to get value in the MVP market. Let's look at two of the hottest tickets. Patrick Mahomes, your two-time MVP, and Josh Allen. They opened as co-favorites with Joe Burrow to win MVP at plus 650, but neither has had the best start to the season, and their odds reflect that. Mahomes' odds slightly improved after week 1 to plus 600, but are now back where they opened at plus 650. Josh Allen, on the other hand, he threw 3 interceptions in week 1 against the Jets, 4 turnovers total, and his odds went up plus 900. However, this past week, he completed over 80% of his passes for 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, but his odds stayed the same. So, Nick, I'll start with you. Is this a good spot to buy low on either Mahomes or Allen to win the MVP?
Yeah, I think there's pretty fair odds for both. I don't see a lot of alpha on either side. I think you can make an argument that both Josh Allen is going to be better over the season. He still has that YOLO tendency, throws too many picks, but I think he's going to get settled in. I think the rushing game under James Cook has gotten a lot better. I think on Mahomes, he needs Kelsey to stay healthy. I think we've seen what that looks like without him. He can't really rely on Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney all that much. I think these numbers are fair right now. I don't think I really see too much value in either. But I do think that if you want to look at someone, I'd be looking a little further down the table, looking at a Trevor Lawrence, looking at a Joe Burrow, and say, hey, this is prime A, this is grade A talent that hasn't really shown up in weeks 1 or 2, and this is when you want to buy low on that.
Rachel, what do you think? Are you buying low on either one?
I like Patrick Mahomes. I think we saw what he was without Travis Kelce and what he is with Travis Kelce. And I think if you can get him at his opening line, now that he's shown when he's got Travis Kelce, he attracts a bunch of attention and he's still going to get his catches. I think when you look at it, there isn't a ton of value on Patrick Mahomes. He is still my best bet to win the MVP. However, Kansas City is such a fantastic team. Patrick Mahomes likes to throw the ball. They're an air it out kind of team. And so I think when you look at it, Patrick Mahomes getting him at plus 650 is not a ton of value, but it's good enough for me. I will go off the back of Nick and say I do like Joe Burrow. He's had a slow start to the season. I think once he sort of gets himself in gear, we'll start to see that this week. That's a good buy low candidate at plus 1600 as well.
And certainly getting him healthy as well will have to do with that. Okay, let's discuss some teams with hot starts to the season. 10 teams have started the season 2-0, with 6 of them in the 2 NFC divisions, in 2 of the NFC divisions. In the East, we look at the Cowboys, Eagles, Commanders. They all won their first 2 games. The Eagles opened as the favorite to win the division at even money, but are now tied with the Cowboys at plus 105. If you think the Commanders maintain their hot start throughout the season, you can get them to win the division at plus 1,200, which is actually better odds than they opened at plus 1,100 after winning 2 games. And in the NFC South, Saints, Falcons, Buccaneers, they've all started with 2 wins as well. The Saints and Panthers opened as co-favorites at plus 200 to win the division, but the Saints have since taken over as the favorites at plus 120. Falcons have moved from plus 350 to the second best odds at plus 150. And Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, like the Commanders, actually have more value now at plus 425 than they did when they opened at plus 375. Rachel, after looking at all the odds movement in these competitive NFC divisions, who would you bet on to win either division?
I'm going to take the Saints. I really like their number, and I really like how they've looked in the first 2 games of the year. I think when you look at it, they've got the best quarterback in the division in Derek Carr. I know that's not saying a ton. There isn't a Jalen Hurts or a Patrick Mahomes in their division, but Derek Carr has shown he can use an array of receivers, and I think that's going to be important. I think the Saints' defense is much improved. It's going to be probably the best in the division. You have Bryce Young, but that's a rookie quarterback. They're going to struggle. Bijan Robinson in Atlanta has been so much fun to watch. I just don't know if Atlanta can hold up their entertaining start over the first few weeks. So I would say I'd take the Saints at plus 120. I think the combination of everything from Derek Carr to the defense is going to make them a good pick to win the division.
Nick, what do you think? Are you interested in the Saints to win the NFC South as well, or do you have an NFC East pick?
I actually like the Saints as well. I think Rachel's right on with this. The Saints, we have them power ranked as a number 8 team overall with a number 3 defense. Very good team. The second easiest schedule moving forward from this point on. I think Rachel is also correct that they've got the best skill talent as well. They've got the best quarterback. They've got better receivers. Michael Thomas coming back. He's healthy. He looks great. We'll get Alvin Kamara back. I think this is a better offense than what Atlanta can show. At the very least, an equivalent defense. I think, the Saints just have a better track record here. I would like it to see it maybe at a plus 130, plus 140. I think at 120, it's skirting the line on what I would consider to be fair value. But I think the Saints are pretty clearly the best team in this division. And I think I'd be betting on them to win it.
All right, some agreement. So let's look at week 3 and who the public is betting on. Last week, yikes, bad for the public. 5 biggest public sides lost, and that's why this segment exists. We have the most bet spreads at BetMGM for Sunday's games, with the Dolphins leading the way at 79%, followed by a big Texans spread at 78%. I like that one too. Another AFC underdog, the Titans at 76%, visiting Cleveland. Mike Vrabel's great on the road as a dog. And the Bills, fresh off a dominating win at 73%. That has the people believing. And America's team finishing the list as huge favorites in Arizona. So, Nick, I'll start with you. Which one are you fading the public on?
I would fade the public on the Titans. I think the Browns are better than most people think. Look, they should have beat the Steelers by 2 touchdowns. That was a crazy game. Many aberrations so far as the defensive touchdowns and the turnovers and all of that. I think the Browns are a really good matchup here for the Titans. Titans are a pass funnel. I would look for Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper really to eat in this matchup. I think Jerome Ford is actually a pretty good equivalent for Nick Chubb. I'm not saying he's Nick Chubb, but I'm saying he's a pretty good replacement. I don't really like the Titans offense against the Browns defense here. Look, Hopkins is injured, probably a little bit washed. I think that the pass rush is going to get to Tannehill. I don't think they'll get the run game started really at all. And I think this is a great spot for the Browns to get right, exercise some of those demons from that Steelers game. And I actually like the Browns pretty comfortably in this game.
And adding in a Kareem Hunt, get that run game going. Rachel, are you going in the same direction as Nick or fading a different game?
I'm going to fade a different game here. I am going to fade the Texans. And I know that they've been somewhat entertaining. They've got the young quarterback. They've got Dameon Pierce at running back. But when you look at it, I just really like the combination of Trevor Lawrence. Houston's defense has not shown that they can stop really anything. And they've really struggled to stop the run in the early going. And so I'm looking at this. You've got Travis Etienne. You've got a mobile quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I think Houston is really going to struggle to stop the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence is going to be looking for a rebound week after really struggling against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. I think this is going to potentially be a blowout. We're looking for big games from Trevor Lawrence, from Travis Etienne. I think Christian Kirk probably has a big game as well. So for me, I look at this and I go, I think this is the Texans. They're going in the right direction with CJ Stroud. I'm not sure they're quite there yet. Similar to Trevor Lawrence in his rookie season.
Okay, I like that one. Let's continue the week 3 discussion, but let's focus on trends, specifically some lopsided matchups. You can see the teams here coming up on your screen. All 3 of these matchups this week have been essentially one-sided over their last 10 meetings. You look at the Patriots, they're 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games against the Jets, including 5 covers in a row. That's pretty convincing. The Colts are an 8-point underdog, but have covered in 8 of their last 10 versus the Ravens. And look at the 2-0 Dolphins, favored by about a touchdown in their first game at home. Yeah, they've also covered in 8 of their last 10 against the Broncos. So, Nick, let's start with you. Are you willing to back either of these trends?
I'm probably a no bet here, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably be leaning Miami. As long as this number stays below 7, I think there is some value at Miami minus 6.5. I think this line probably should be somewhere between 7.5 to 8. What you're really looking for here, it's a terrible matchup. The number 1 pass offense in the Dolphins, most efficient, most points added, versus the 4th worst on the Broncos. I have a hard time seeing how the Broncos in Miami are going to stop Tyreek Hill, stop Tua. 6.5 does seem like a big number. Like, I think I'd be somewhat interested at 6.5. I'm probably leaning no bet. If it does move to 7, I'm fully no bet. But I think there's too much firepower in Miami. I don't see how Denver really stays in this game. So if I had to pick one, I'd be leaning the Dolphins.
Rachel, do you like this trend, and are any of these games sticking out to you?
I am going to take the Dolphins. I like them at -6.5. I think once you get to above a touchdown 7.5, that's probably a no bet for me, even though my model has it at somewhere around 8.5. I still think there needs to be enough value. And so at 6.5, I like Miami. I think that Denver is going to have a ton of issues struggling to defend the pass, specifically when you look at the combination of Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle. They've been absolutely lethal so far. Tua's done a fantastic job of sort of spreading the ball around and finding the open man, whether it is Tyreek or it's Jalen Waddle. I think even the combination of having Raheem Mostert in the back is going to be sort of a big threat, and it's going to sort of present a lot of problems for Denver to defend against. And so I look at this and I go, this could be even a 10-point game. And so at -6.5, this is a bet for me for the Dolphins.
As I said, Dolphins are 2-0, now playing their first game at home, but there are 9 winless teams, 0-2 in the NFL. So let's check out this trend that might help some of them turn their fortunes around. Since 2005, winless teams are 82, 63, and 4 against the spread in week 3 per BetLab. So you see the winless teams there on your screen. We've already mentioned the Dolphins and Patriots. The Vikings and Chargers are playing each other in Minnesota. The Bears and Cardinals are both huge underdogs at +12.5. They're just begging you to take it. Rachel, what team do you think continues this trend?
If I've got to pick one team to sort of win this week, I'm going to take the Vikings. I know that's a very dangerous thing to be doing, but I think that the Chargers, they've shown they just like to air the ball out. They're without Austin Eckler. I think that's going to be an issue. And you look at Minnesota, Justin Jefferson still hasn't scored a touchdown. I think that probably changes this week. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game that Minnesota comes out on top of simply because they have more weapons. If Austin Eckler is healthy, I think maybe I'd go with the Chargers. But at this point, I'm going to have to take the Vikings to buck the trend and get a win this week because of all of the weapons they have, whether it's TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson. I think that there's going to be a ton of offense in Minnesota. It probably comes down to the last sort of, I guess, stretch of the game. And that's where I think that they come out on top.
Nick, are you eyeing that same game, or does another one stick out?
I like that game. I think, Rachel is right. There's too much firepower in the Vikings. Jordan Addison, has been such a great weapon for them. But I'm actually leaning the Patriots. The line is oscillating between 2.5 to 3. I think I like it more at 2.5 than I like it at 3. Because this game is going to be ugly. This game is going to be just brutal to watch from an offensive football perspective. This really comes from looking at Zach Wilson versus Bill Belichick. In 4 games versus Bill Belichick, he's got a 2-7 touchdown to interception ratio. He's 0-4. He completes barely 50% of his passes. Bill Belichick is salivating right now thinking about seeing Zach Wilson. This is not really any sort of confidence in the Patriots as a team. I think really just this is a terrible matchup for the Jets. The Patriots seem to have their number, and I think I like it more at 2.5 than I like it at 3, but I do like the Patriots to really shut down the Jets in a really low-scoring, ugly game.
Bill Belichick salivating is the perfect visual I can have going into this one. I love it. All right, it's time for primetime props. We're each going to share our favorite prop in one of the primetime games. Nick, why don't you go first?
I really like George Pickens over 54.5 receiving yards against the Raiders. He leads Pittsburgh in air yards by a pretty significant amount. 38% of the air yards. He is their downfield receiver. You saw what Diggs and Davis did against the Raiders last week. The Raiders, not a particularly strong pass defense. I have them power rated as the 27th worst pass defense. I think, this game is going to be a game. There's going to be a lot of points, even though the The Steelers offense is still finding itself, but Pickens is clearly number one wide receiver. I think he can beat the Raiders pretty consistently downfield. I have this projected at around 60, 61 yards, maybe even 62. So I think there's pretty clear value over 54.5 for George Pickens in this game.
I like it. Rachel, your turn to play. What do you like?
I like the Monday Nighter, and I'm going to go with Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I also like Najee Harris at over 51.5 rushing yards. I have him projected for 58.5. And when you look at it, I think that you talk about George Pickens, he's going to be a weapon that they're going to have to cover in the Raiders defense. And yes, their defense, like Nick just said, is not very good. But I do like Najee Harris because they're going to have to focus on taking away the pass. And I think with Kenny Pickett, he's not going to be trusted as much with Matt Canada to throw the ball. And so I think if George Pickens gets it, that's pretty much the only receiver that might be getting it. And so Najee Harris is probably going to have to wear a lot of this offense on his shoulders coming into this week. I really like this to be a battle of the backs, whether it's Josh Jacobs or Najee Harris. And so I think he comfortably clears this line. I also think he probably scores a touchdown, but for me, the value at over 51.5 is something I just cannot pass up.
Okay, now we widen the lens a little bit and we give you free range. It's your blue chip bet of the weekend. It can be in anything, spread, money line, total, prop, whatever you want. Nick, go ahead. What is your blue chip bet? I can't wait to see what random game you're picking.
I actually have two this week. The first one is Josh Allen over 30.5 rushing yards. Look, the Redskins, the Commanders. I'm sorry, the Commanders. old habits. They bring the heat, 10 sacks, 20 QB hits in the first 2 weeks. They're going to be rushing Josh Allen. They're going to be pressuring him. Josh Allen's going to be able to get out of this pocket. Last week, Russell Wilson hit them up for 56 rushing yards. I think Josh Allen's going to be able to escape that pressure, go over this 30.5 rushing yards, and I like that pretty comfortably. I think if you want to get a little bit crazy, I have a World Series prop. I think plus 350, plus 360 AL East to win the World Series. I think the Rays and the Orioles, two best teams in the AL. Some questions about the rotation, but I think between those two teams, there's real value. So if you want to go a little crazy with some futures bets, I like the AL East teams to win the World Series as well.
Okay, I was half expecting like a D3 college football bet, but I'm glad you went pretty mainstream.
I can't get a market on it. Carnegie Mellon to win.
There
you go. All right, Rachel, what do you like?
All right, I'm going to stick in the NFL as much as I like the AL East bet. I'm going to go with Bengals money line. I think they're 0-2. This is really tough. The Rams defense is not very good outside of Aaron Donald. And Joe Burrow kind of showed last week he threw for his touchdown. And I mean, given that I have Burrow to throw over 1.5 passing touchdowns coming into this week, I think this is the week where Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase go off and they show the NFL, hey, don't forget about us. We're still going to be here. So even at 155, I am going to lay heavy on the Bengals money line. I just don't see them losing 3 in a row. And I think Joe Burrow's finally going to get in this third week. He's going to be up to speed. He's going to be on the same page as his receivers. He's going to be able to read those defenses a little bit better. And given that he's been kind of gifted the LA Rams defense here, I think he takes full advantage. So I am laying on the Bengals pretty heavy this week. That's my biggest bet of the week.
And you have Burrow MVP. I mean, you're all in. I think the Bengals white unis too will give them a little edge. Have you seen those things? They're going to be cool.
Oh, I might have to get those. I might have to get myself a Joe Burrow white uni. I don't have an NFL jersey because I'm not really a fan of any specific team, but those white unis, they're beautiful.
They are. He'll look extra fast in that one. All right. Thank you both so much for contributing this week. And thanks all of you at home for watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week.